Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Noah with Unscripted Commentaries, and last week I put out a form asking if there were any submissions for things to talk about or questions the community had, and here is the first of those response type ones. I'll think of a clever name for it. Afriel asks, how can gamers and anime enjoyers with stable lives convince boomer-minded people like Matt Walsh and Homath that they don't know what they're talking about? The best answer I've gotten is that they might change their minds when their grandchildren ask them to play Minecraft. I would like a cultural reconquista, if you will. But it seems unlikely to begin with, and less likely when talking heads who are ostensibly on the same side are denigrating what I see as a valid form of art. This is a really interesting thing. It aligned with something I have been reading lately. There's a book by C.S. Lewis called An Experiment in Criticism. And, C.S. Lewis was kind of well known for some of his other books like Chronicles of Narnia and Mere Christianity. But he also had he was a professor of literature, and so he had his own book on that. And in this book, he talks about the idea of critique, of how we say one book is bad but another book is good. And he tries to reframe the conversation in a way to focus more on the readings of books. That what's really important is not the book itself, the words on the page. It's about the experience of the person reading the book. That is the most important thing. And so he starts out that what you need at the basis of this to be able to communicate this is you need a common layer of communication. So in his case, he's talking about like people who are literally minded, right? That you can tell they know what they're talking about, basically. That you have a common form of communication. And then once you have that trust built up between the two of you, you can then communicate the effect that this other thing has had on you, you know? And I think that's the trouble, is that sometimes we start off on the side of like, I just want to communicate what I love really passionately. But it's building those connections, those bridges, that's really important. And so maybe for some people, especially if they're more kind of snobby in their tastes, that looks something like reading the Odyssey and talking about your experience of it. Building those bridges, actually paying the high cost of trying to garner their favor, if you will. And it's not going to work for everyone, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that they're even going to pay attention or take it seriously. But I know in my case, right, like there's a guy who makes video essays, Super Eye Patch Wolf. I've been watching his videos lately, and he's made a few videos on I think around video games. I might be misremembering entirely, but I think he's done a few on video games. At least his fake video games essay was really good, and that was something I could connect with very well. And I could see, oh no, he has some insight here that I'm appreciating. And it was once I had that kind of layer of like, okay, I see that there's a connection here. Then when I watched his videos about WWE, I was like, I don't think I'm going to care about WWE, but like, let's kind of sit here and listen to this person I think has good insight, talk about something that he's passionate about. And then I saw, oh, there's a layer to this that I had not seen before. That this is a type of storytelling that I had completely discounted, but it changed the way I thought about things. And so that's where I see it. I think it's also important to note that tastes are not going to change, right? To a certain extent. I think there are a lot of people who are just never going to like anime because they have certain associations, certain right associations, I'd say, or video games, right? It's just not in their vocabulary. It's not in their realm. And so I think there is also something to say about like generations have their tastes and they die out. We can want people to be more open about their tastes and appreciate more things, but at the same time, like, every generation is going to have its biases, both for and against certain things. And there is going to be a generation that, doesn't care for this, and they're not going to be around forever. And, as generations go on, there's going to be things that are liked more. One thing Lewis brings up in this book is the idea of one generation's kind of trashy, cult novel, right? Cult. Maybe that's not the word I'm looking for, but pulp novel. Might be another generation's like mythology that they build their world or their worldview around, right? And it's going to be complicated. That's my thought. I think there's plenty more to explore there. But I think it kind of just goes how it does. And I think if you want to make that change, it might look something like the Super Eye Patch Wolf, right? Like laying down this framework of showing your insights into very popular things, and then being able to expose to the world your love for something that might not be so popular. But because you have that connection, it is able to convince people. I think convincing people is the... Oh, gosh. Okay. I'm just choking. I think convincing people might not be the right word, but it's trying to communicate your love. And, I can't think of anything better than through friendship, right? Very rarely do we convince other people face to face, but side by side. But yeah. And maybe somebody is open-minded enough to at least try it and to try to look at a piece of art from your perspective. But that's my thought. Please, everybody in the comments, feel free to comment what you think. I'd love to have a great conversation about this. Yeah, and if anybody is interested, please check out Afriel's channel. He makes very good live streams that I hang out in every once in a while. And so, yep, if you want to have your question answered, feel free to submit an answer or a question in the forum below. By default, it is anonymous, but Afriel put his name, so I said it wasn't anonymous. I try to make that clear in the forum. If he gets mad, I will censor his name and we'll remove it from the record. But I hope you all have an amazing day, and thank you for checking out Unscripted Commentaries. Goodbye.